Hello, my name is Kelly Heckman, and I am the co-founder of FiXiT, a nonprofit dedicated to ending companion animal overpopulation by creating marketing and incentive-based strategies to give all pet owners the desire and ability to get their animals spayed and neutered. In this webinar, I'm going to discuss the perception survey performed on St. Croix as part of FiXiT's Final Fix project. When we started, we knew we didn't have a lot in common with the pet owners on St. Croix. Generating a marketing program would require some long conversations and research. We started with the shelter information about intake, which was helpful for understanding that there was a problem. For example, intake was biased towards dogs 2-to-1, and the euthanasia rate was consistently 80%. And not a lot of people were using their existing spay and neuter voucher program, only 3 to 5 people per week. But this didn't really give us any insight into how to solve the problem. We wanted to have a complete perspective of the pet caring community as a whole and narrow in more and more with information about why they have or hadn't spayed and neutered their animals, and then allowing us to get to those low-hanging fruit. This was done primarily to find out how effective a strategy of offering spay and neuter at different price points would be, including free, and by offering a variety of incentives. That was our goal. So in addition to some basic questions about animal ownership and spay and neuter, we wanted to get a better sense of the challenges that prevent people from taking action. Were they aware of the existing program or its costs? Did they know where to find the information or have transportation to utilize that service? Then would they respond to a free surgery or free plus an incentive? Our goal was to find the tipping point in this group of people where the offer was just too good to refuse. To get started, we lined up surveyors. Some were members of our advisory committee, others connections we had made, and others hired from an ad in the local newspaper. We ended up with 5 total and gave each a retail territory. There aren't a whole lot of retail options on St. Croix. We have a Kmart East and a Kmart West, plus grocery stores Plaza East and Plaza West. We did give them the flexibility to go to other locations, and they did, quite successfully, but we wanted to split up these big retail territories. We started with the goal of asking 1,250 people. With our 5 lined up surveyors, each could reach out to 250 people. We estimated that we would make contact with 25 people an hour and get a completed survey for 10 of those. Obviously, this all depends on the amount of traffic in the locations and how long the survey was going to take to complete. We paid $2 for every survey completed, which optimally equals $20 per hour if a surveyor was meeting our goals. They were paid when we received back the surveys completed. Ultimately, we completed 1,189 surveys, which was about 2.4% of the island's population. Of those, 452 were pet owners or caregivers, and 38% of the island's households. Of those pet owners, 57% cared for only dogs, 23% only for cats, and 20% cared for both. With 77% of the pet owners caring for dogs, we could already see why St. Croix had a big homeless dog problem. This becomes even more clear when we were looking at the number of people who had spayed and neutered their animals, and found that only 35% of pet owners were fixing them. The number is closer to 30% for dog owners alone, and of those that had fixed their dogs, many were often already fixed when they got them. The animal shelter fortunately fixes all animals before they go into their adoptive homes. We would then further analyze the survey responses by sex and age. We didn't use race as a factor since the majority of people on St. Croix have a West Indian heritage, or those that don't speak English, which we are not able to accommodate for this survey. In this differentiation produced some interesting results. There were some clear differences among females and male responses to our questions. Males were much less likely to have fixed their animals. Anecdotally, we quickly learned that there was a lot of misinformation about what happens when an animal is fixed, like taking more than just the testicles during a neuter, which may dissuade some people from neutering their male animals. People were much less likely to fix dogs versus cats. Not as many people care for cats like pets. They are considered more like wildlife than a domesticated animal. But those people that were caring for cats seemed to be frustrated by the ability for them to reproduce so much. On the other hand, less than 30% of dog owners are getting their animals fixed, When we would later do our first and subsequent animal census drives, it would become obvious that not only having dogs fixed and letting them roam around freely was significant factors contributing to the large animal shelter intake. The reasons for not fixing their animals were right in line with what other groups had found in previous studies. The desire to breed, a high-hanging fruit, was number one, followed by expense and hadn't bothered yet for dogs. Separated out by species, no one wants to breed cats. Not one person said it was concerned about the health of a cat as a reason for not spaying and neutering. The number one reason was that it was just unnecessary, followed by the fact they hadn't bothered. So targeting cat caregivers seemed in general like a high-hanging fruit, given that people just don't seem to have the emotional or social connection to them. We found economical and motivational issues dominated the actions of people on St. Croix. Women respondents were dramatically less interested in breeding dogs. They were more likely to have just not bothered. Both men and women were very concerned with the expense. Very few were interested in health, thought it was unnatural, or that it could change the animal's behaviors. As mentioned, a lot of the reason we did this survey was to test to see if people would respond to a free spay-neuter service. When asked about whether they would use a low-cost service, only 18.5% of the people said yes. These were people more likely to have been concerned with the expense or otherwise previously not sure of where to get it done. More than twice said no, that they were not interested in low cost. The numbers don't add up to 100% because not all people were giving this question as dictated by the logical flow of the survey. However, when asked about whether they would be more likely if spay and neuter was free, the pattern completely reversed. Now, 47% said they would be likely and expanded beyond those that said just expense was the primary reason. Of those few that continued to not want to do it were those high-hanging fruits that thought breeding and changing behavior were top reasons. Here you can see that we also gained the attention of those that hadn't bothered or thought it was unnecessary. This was a great pattern motivating us to continue as planned. Of course, we didn't really make a dent in the high-hanging fruit issues with free spay-neuter, such as breeding, thinking it was unnatural, or that it would change their behavior. But we saw that transportation could be a good incentive for people that were low-hanging fruit, just as those that cited expense as an issue hadn't bothered or weren't sure where to go. With this new insight into our target community, we were ready to start developing messages to convince people that spay and neutering their animals would benefit them and their animals. Next, we would develop messages to target these people. Get more information about FiXiT, SMART, or other programs that we provide to reduce the number of animals euthanized every year at fixit-foundation.org, or join us on social media to extend the conversation.